Well, hello and welcome to the Profit Express. I'm Tim Healy, and I'm inviting you to join me each and every week so together we can win the battle for business. That's right. We do it here and only here on the Profit Express. So as always, thanks for being on board. Thanks for sharing some of what I know is your precious time, your very busy time. And today on the Profit Express, I want to tackle the question, can a purpose-driven company really effectively drive profits? I mean, this is the Profit Express after all. And today's guest is Terri Maxwell. She is the CEO and founder of Share on Purpose. And her story started back in 2008. It was actually a very interesting story because up until that time, Terri's career or other prior businesses were all about helping companies grow their brands. She took a number of companies public, and she also took a number of them to being able to sell and have great exit strategies. Then again, we're right back around 2008. And as she's doing her business, she's kind of realizing that all the hard work that she's putting in, all the systems and processes of helping companies build their brands, going public, et cetera, she's really doing it for a lot of companies that, as she felt, just were really not worth it. They didn't have a great purpose. And as she said, she found herself in a spot where she felt her soul was dying. Wow. If that isn't a recollection of where you are and a reflection as to, what the heck is going on in life and what's going on in business, but when you have that kind of a thought, something's got to give. So it was at that moment that one of her key accounts, one of her more famous accounts, I'll let her share that story, kind of gave her an epiphany, if you will. And it was at that moment that she realized that, there are companies that are purpose-driven, that have real meaning. And it was this one company, this one special company of hers that was the only one on her client roster that actually was a purpose-driven, authentic company. And she realized, wow, I got to pivot. I got to find more clients like this. So that really was the beginning of what is now her company, Share on Purpose, where again, she's helping to grow purpose-driven companies, helping them grow their brands. And she's also an investor in a number of those companies as well. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have a conversation here on the Profit Express with Terri Maxwell, who's been in the business of growing brands for decades now. And obviously now she's doing it with a specific focus of working with and supporting purpose-driven brands. And I want to play the role of maybe being a bit skeptical here on the Profit Express. Can a purpose-driven brand really create the level of profit and growth that other more traditional brands can? I don't know. Is it easier or harder to market and grow a purpose-driven brand? I don't know. I'm not sure. That's why I want to have Terri on today. I think she's got a really amazing story. I think her focus and that sea change that she had in 2008 that's led her to the work that she's doing today is really quite interesting. And hey, that's why she's on the show today. So it's a great pleasure to have on board the Profit Express. Terri Maxwell, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this discussion, and you're not the first skeptic that I've talked to, so.
Well, I want to be a healthy skeptic, not a negative skeptic, because I know I want to learn, and I know a lot of people, they may have their own sense of skepticism, but then also I know that there's people listening who also either have their own purpose-driven brand or are thinking of starting their own purpose-driven brand. So either way, the conversation is going to be great. So let's do this. When somebody says they felt their soul was dying, okay, that gets my attention in my research, right? So take us back to that moment.
Yeah, I had this experience with the company, and I'm happy to share it. The company was Holy Guacamole. Mm-hmm. And they were founder-led. They were the largest packaged guacamole brand around. And their reason for starting it is they wanted to create a healthier guacamole product. Unfortunately, somebody knocked their packaging off and they were losing market share. And we came in originally to do a marketing strategy for them. But lo and behold, we found out that nobody knew the name of their brand. At the time, they were not called Holy Guacamole. They were called something else. No one knew the name of their brand. And I was freaking out. They paid us a lot of money to come in and give them a marketing strategy. And we had to tell them, we can't market it because nobody you're the number one brand, you have the largest market share, and nobody knows who you are. And we were talking to the founder and his team. Right. It was an ouch moment. And he said, well, if nobody knows our brand, then why are we in business? And I was like, whoa, like corporations, the other corporations I worked for, they would have kicked us out in a heartbeat.
Right.
And they were a good sized company. And so he said, well, what do you recommend? And we said, you're going to have to change the name of the company or the brand. And I will never forget a look in his face. And he said, that's going to be expensive. And I was like, yeah. And he asked a few questions about how do you do that? And we said it has to be a brand that means something because your product means something. And the reason you started your product means something. And he was like, thank you for taking me back to that. You're right. The product does mean something. And we're not just selling a product. We really do want our customers to have a healthier product. We need a brand that speaks to that. Give me a proposal to do that. And I drove home. They were in Fort Worth. I drove home in awe. And I was like, oh my God, that is a founder that really cares about what he's doing. And the rest of my clients, large corporations, none that I'll mention, did not have the same sense. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know about purpose. I didn't know about conscious business. But I quickly, within about 3 months, started the process of selling that business and exiting and starting over with this crazy idea that I wanted to work with companies that cared about their product. They cared about their target market in a meaningful way. And that's what started it.
So you have this interesting meeting with Holy Guacamole, and they have to pivot and really change everything. Nobody knew who the heck they were despite their market share. So they're in shock. And then you're in a different kind of shock as you're driving home from, was it Dallas, wherever it was, where you're realizing that none of your other brands were as purpose-driven as Holy Guacamole. So that kind of had to be like an empty feeling for you. Very empty, very empty. And it was really hard for me. The team that was working on it was truly one of the best marketing teams that we had in the company's history. But I remember, standing, we had this all hands meeting because I had 40 consultants working for me at the time. It was a good sized business. And standing in front is, everybody gave these kind of highlights of the week and realizing, many of my employees didn't get this distinction either. And secondly, that the kind of highlights that they were giving were about market share increases and product rollouts. None of it was around, a company recognizing that the customer that they were serving, they weren't connecting with them in a way that was meaningful. And I was like, I can't continue to look at my employees like this because I now have seen a different way to do business that never had occurred to me. So for the listeners, and for me too, define as you know it, as you would describe it, define what is a purpose-driven business. Yeah, there's a lot of misconception about that. It's not a nonprofit, although there are some. It's not a social impact venture. We found in our research that there are 5 characteristics of a conscious business, that they have what I call a values-based business model. I'm going to share 3 of them, and the other 2 aren't really relevant. But number 1 is the reason for existing is to solve a problem, not sell a product. And that solving a problem versus selling a product, Holy Guacamole wanted to solve the problem of getting healthy guacamole in the hands of their consumers. It wasn't just about pushing more product out the door. So the solving a problem really matters. The second thing was pricing. And the way that a conscious or purposeful business prices, the price of their product is on the value it provides rather than what someone will pay. And, there's large companies. I consider Apple a conscious business, even though it's high price.
the value of their product to me, they understand me, their buyer, I'm willing to pay more for this product because of the value that I receive. And they know me. I feel like they understand what I want and they make products that I want. So pricing based on value rather than what are people willing to pay is number two. And then the third one is the way that they view success. A conscious or a company that's got a values-based business model, they view success in terms of the impact that they're making, not just the profit. That profit allows them to make more impact rather than profit allows me to go buy a yacht or whatever it is. And I saw that with Holy Guacamole, the way that they had an ESOP and they made sure their employees were taken care of, and they wanted to earn more profit so they could give back to the local community and so that they could pay their employees more. The way that they structured the business and the way that they managed the business was conscious and purposeful. And I wanted more of that.
And I'm not asking for clients, just, the listeners, what would be what you think is a great example of a purpose-driven brand, that you're impressed by, that we would know?
I'll tell you one that there's a public story to this one, but Whole Foods was one of the original Patagonia. I'm going to use Whole Foods because it's an interesting story. Their founder stood on stage at a national conference and said, had we had a public benefit corporation structure, we would have not sold the business to Amazon. Now, there's all sorts of things behind what he said. If we were a public benefit corporation, so there's a legal structure now for conscious businesses, and I have adopted this structure that gives you latitude to not grow for growth's sake, but to grow to increase your impact. And so they were a C Corp, and as a result of that, it was, hey, we can't continue to grow without X, Y, and Z. We need to sell and we need to exit to maximize shareholder value. As a public benefit corporation, you say, hey, we're struggling to grow and our customers are requiring more from us. We want to slow down our growth and we want to improve the way we're serving our customers so that we add more value. And so they were a conscious business. I don't know so much today, but their founder stood on stage and said, had we had a public benefit corporation structure, we probably wouldn't have had to sell the business to Amazon. And at that point, as I was listening to this talk, I was like, wow. Whoa. Yeah, big time. And so that I fell in love with the public benefit structure model because it keeps you focused on why you start the business. And it keeps you focused on who you're serving and how you're serving them, value measures and impact measures, and certainly growth measures, but it balances the scale. Many people have heard of balanced scorecard. It balances the scale, but it puts teeth in it through the legal structure.
All right, so you brought up a very good distinction. I wasn't thinking that, so that's why I'm glad we went down that path. Might be a silly question, but can a publicly traded company be a purpose-driven company, or is there a conflict of interest? Because at the end of the day, it's shareholder value.
Great question. There's a huge movement right now backed by several leaders in this space. And what they're saying is it's all about the legal structure, the legal and capital structure of the business. Mm-hmm. And so I would buy a stock in a public benefit corporation because I know they're more likely to make decisions based on what's creating value for the customer and the employees, not just the shareholders. It balances that out legally. And so, yes, there are some publicly traded companies that have that structure. But the thing that I always like to point out is sometimes they're going to beat their peers and sometimes they're not. But the reasons they're going to beat and the reasons why they're not are because they're providing more value to the whole stakeholder population rather than trying to hit a goal to please Wall Street.
Okay. All right. So now let's get back. So, you had decades of experience growing brands, taking companies public, and then you had that sea change moment, that soul searching moment in 2008, and holy guacamole helped you see the light, as it were. So you've got experience on both sides, marketing and branding, a traditional business, and now obviously the purpose-driven business. So for those listening, whether they're on either side, what does it take let me ask it this way. What's the difference in promoting a traditional business versus a purpose-driven business? Is one easier or one harder?
I would say we're in a line of demarcation. If you would have asked me this question 3 to 6 months ago, I would say it's harder to market a purpose-based business. Mm-hmm. But there's a change happening right now, and I publish a report called the Conscious Business Forecast. And my next report that's coming out, I'm doing the research on it right now, is mind-blowing. That 50% of all businesses that are started today are started to make a difference as well as make money, rather than for the sole purpose of making money. 50% of all businesses. Okay. In all developed nations. That's from the global. Yeah, that's from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. That's not Terri's data point. That's big time research.
Right.
The second thing is trust is at an all-time low. And there's so much animosity, regardless of the reason why it's there. There's so much animosity and so much frustration and so much greed that has happened that consumers and buyers are basically fed up. And so they're not clicking on ads the way that they used to. As a digital marketer, I know how to run ad campaigns. I know how to run SEO. They're looking for relationships, and they're digging into your company, and they want to know, do you treat your employees fairly? Do you ruin the environment in the process of building your product? And so the buyers are making different decisions today. And again, lots of data now is backing this up. Mm-hmm. And we're at a tipping point in the conscious business space that I feel like it is going to become easier to market those businesses today. I'm betting on that. I bet our portfolio on that, because you're building a relationship with the buyer rather than just throwing a product and an ad down their throat.
So your research tells you currently of the businesses that people are looking to start now, essentially 50% globally, I believe you said globally, are looking to not just have, of course, a profitable business, it has to be, but also tied to that is the purpose of the business. And those three keys that you said again.
You got it. That it's designed to do good.
Right. Okay. So, that's a huge percentage. But then the next thing you said, and it's kind of what I alluded to in the beginning, consumers are tired, they're wary, they're skeptical, okay? Because of digital, because of social, so on and so forth, influencers and all that nonsense. So then doesn't that make your job harder then?
Well, that's the thing that's fascinating. And I'll use one of our investments as an example. This is Your Izzy. And this is my favorite investment of everything we've invested in. This is the first zero waste makeup and skincare line. Mm-hmm. Zero waste, so no waste, right? And when I can see it in the data that our ad campaigns that we run for them, the conversion rate is starting to go up very quickly. And I'm like, well, why is that happening? I'm digging in with the team. Why is conversion rate, which is one of the things you need to sell more product, going up rapidly? 2 reasons. Number one, we modified the message to not be a sales message, but to be a value message, talking about the value to the buyer, not buy our product today, here's the price. And then secondly, we have a calculator on their website where we send people, where people can calculate their footprint that they're creating with personal care products. What's your waste footprint? And I can go in and I can send that, and we have an ad campaign that pushes that calculator out. People are shocked when they realize, well, I have this makeup and I have this deodorant, I have this hair product. Yeah. Okay, what's your waste footprint, and how long is that going to stay in landfills? And they're shocked, but they're on our email list. They don't buy right then. They're on our email list, and then we just basically send them key messages, blogs, ways that they can reduce their waste footprint and personal care products. And then every now and then we'll send, hey, you can buy two if you put your products together, you'll get X discount. Sales go up. But it's not because we put a promotion hardcore buy our product today. It's because we gave them something to think about. We gave them something of value, which is calculating your waste footprint. And secondly, there's a nurture campaign where we're building a relationship and we're building trust over time. And then what we're seeing is those people are now buying our product. So it's a combination of what we say on the website and how we say it. And then secondly, building a relationship with them until they're ready to buy in a very authentic way.
And in doing my research for the show, I know you've talked about this, and that no waste, or I don't want to butcher it, this product that you've invested in, what is it called?
It's called Your Izzy, and it's a zero waste makeup and skincare line.
Actually, I found it interesting. Let's just tell us about that product a little bit.
Yeah. So if you think of this is the lip gloss, I will never use any other lip gloss than this. And so if you think about lip gloss products, they're, in plastic. And when I'm done, I throw it away. With this one, they actually, every 3 months, 4 months, whatever you want, they ship me a new one. This is steel. They ship me a new one, and I put that, on my sink, and I take the one that I'm no longer using. I stick it in a bag and I ship it back. They rinse it, they clean it up, do all of the sanitizing they need to do, and they refill it, put it back on the shelf, ship it again. So there's really no waste to it. They have a skincare product as well that's similar, sure. Makeup, mascara, and this the fascinating thing is personal care products are the second biggest pollutant after water and juice bottles, and we know how bad those are, right? So they have found a way to not have any plastic waste. But the cool thing is, again, this is a very purposeful founder and why I believe in this product and him. They have found a way to make it a better experience for me. So not only am I not putting waste in the environment, but this is a great product. And I tell everybody about this even before I became an investor. I mean, I chased them down to invest in them because I was so enthralled with the product. So it's a better product, but it also has zero waste in the environment. That is a purposeful, conscious business.
And that's the story. That's how you're connecting. That's how you're marketing.
Exactly.
What's your waste footprint? Okay, and then beginning to build trust, beginning to kind of forge a bit of a relationship.
Yep.
Now, I know you've written a couple of books. I think you've co-authored one. There's a process I want you to talk about that I think could be very interesting. The authentic demand process. Never heard of it before. It's the Profit Express. Share it with us, please.
Yeah. So if you think of most demand or lead generation marketing programs, mm-hmm. You get awareness, and then you get leads, and then you make sales, right? All of everything that in marketing, and this is the most important point, everything in marketing is designed to get you to buy. Everything in marketing, right? And this is the root of why my soul was dying. Everything that I was doing was designed, manipulating to get you to buy. What authentic demand generation is everything that we're doing is building a relationship with you until you tell us you're ready to buy. And so it's called the 4 F's. It's a relationship building process: friend, mm-hmm. follower, fan, fanatic. So the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to try to get you to buy. We're going to basically say, hey, I want to be friends with you. Download this quiz. Like in your Izzy case, let me tell you a story about, why we started the business. We're friends, like our social media page. But we're not like hardcore trying to get you to buy, buy today, that FOMO thing. Then what we do from there is we connect with you in meaningful ways so that you're following our brand and you're interested in what we have to say. And that friend follower is how you win what I call the first sale. The first sale is when a buyer is interested in learning more about your brand and buying from you. And that's what Holy Guacamole had mastered, is they were in social media before social media was cool. They were building relationships. They were sharing recipes. These were all things we were helping them do, obviously, but let's share recipes for different ways to use guacamole, not buy guacamole today. And so we were doing all these social things. We were out at events, giving tastings and talking about different ways that you could use this healthy guacamole. That's the first sale, friend follower. Now your buyer wants to buy from you. And so you don't have to hard press sell them, buy today for $9.99 or 20% off if you buy today. You don't have to play those games because the buyer wants to buy from you. Now, the second sale is where the transaction actually occurs, and that's when they become a fan. The beautiful thing, so friend, follower, fan, the beautiful thing is if their experience with what they buy, I'll use your Izzy as an example. Mm-hmm. I was marketed to Izzy, not as an investor, but as because I was in their target market. I fell in love with the product. I bought the product. It was such an authentic experience, the way it was shipped, the way it was packaged, the whole experience, that I became a fan. And then I wanted to tell everybody. So now I go from fan to fanatic. And of course, I wanted to invest as well. Well, if you turn your fans, the people that are buying your products, into fanatics, they do a large part of the marketing for you. And that's what authentic demand generation is. It's creating a relational inbound marketing campaign so that your buyers, who are your fans, become fanatics and they want to tell other people about your brand. They're evangelists.
So as I'm hearing you, describe the authentic demand process, and, we've been talking about your story and what led you, the soul dying experience. So it's kind of ironic that, when you were branding and marketing the traditional clients that you had, and you said at the time you only had one authentic one, that was Holy Guacamole. And then as you're doing your job and you're creating success, I think, what was it, 50 brands you've helped take public or something? Again, I don't want to mess the statistics up, but quite a few, whatever that number is. So you've got your track record and your success. And as you're going through this soul-searching moment, it's ironic that the more successful you are, it's like the more dissatisfied or empty you feel. And that's just kind of what I'm hearing here.
Man, you hit the nail on the head. And again, irony is a funny thing. We were in the process of buying another company at the time to expand. Right. And I was like, oh God, I can't do this, and the funny thing is as I was preparing to acquire this company, I started thinking about that we were getting ready to go into a recession. So this is February, March of 2008. And so now I'm like, not only am I not buying this company, but I don't have the time to pivot my brand to whatever this thing is. When there's a recession coming, I'm going to exit. And I sold the business in pieces and started over with this crazy idea that I wanted to find a way, and I didn't know how it was going to work. I wanted to find a way to use my business growth skills to grow things that matter. And that was what caused the journey. But talk about scary. If I didn't have a pretty decent net worth, I'm not sure I would have done it. Fortunately, I had some good money in the bank to get me through it. But it was daunting, and there was just not enough time for me to pivot the business to do things that mattered. I just had to start over, and I don't regret that decision one bit. But man, that was one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make.
Well, that's the classic. And listen, I love sharing the stories on the Profit Express, obviously, because that's what people relate to, right? For their own inspiration, for that feeling that, hey, somebody else did this, right? So you put your cheese on the line there. I mean, pretty clearly, it wasn't just like, we're going to, pivot and maybe try some different verticals or some different strategies. You basically, you were still in marketing, but in growth strategies, but you were kind of starting from scratch.
Totally started from scratch, started over. It took us about a year to get everything sold and get our employees. Many of our customers hired our employees right away, even though we were going into a recession, which was good for them. Yeah. We had a great team. They were phenomenal marketers, but they weren't having this kind of purposeful awakening that I was having at the time. So, it worked out for everybody, but man, it was tough. And I took some time off because I didn't know how to get from here to there. I just knew that I didn't want to be here anymore, and I didn't know what there looked like, and I was going to find a way to do it. And, I just bet the farm that I would figure out how to do it. And the funniest thing is most of the things that I tried after I took that time off and said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. That first year, I lost so much money marketing, it wasn't even funny. Because I didn't know how to retrain my brain to think in terms of value. I was still using those hardcore lead funnel, click magnet kind of stuff. Yeah. I was still doing all of that, and it just didn't work. And finally, I think after about a year of losing a lot of money, I said, all right, I think I'm just going to go out and I'm going to serve people and I'm going to see what happens. So I started speaking for free and being on somebody's radio show and just talking about the different things that I was doing. And the next thing you know, it started to work. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not marketing. I'm actually just out there helping people, and that's working. And when I was doing billboards and running digital ads and all that kind of stuff, it didn't work. And that was the beginning of the authentic demand generation. This is a relationship building marketing strategy. It's not a digital marketing strategy or an SEO marketing strategy. It's about building relationships with buyers and serving them until they're ready to buy.
Did you have family and friends who said, what the hell are you doing?
Everybody said, what the hell are you doing? My peer network thought I was nuts. Family members thought I was nuts. Friends were like, what are you doing? And when I jump into something, I jump all in. I bought a Hummer. I wrapped the Hummer with our first brand. I was like, they literally thought I was having a midlife crisis. And I kind of was. It was just a soulful crisis. And I just didn't care. I said,
wait, hold on a second. Wait, this is too funny. All right. So up until that point, you had a successful business by all
Very
accounts.
Successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is hard to walk away from no matter what, even if you got a lot in the bank. So then you have that first year where you're still kind of using your old strategies. It's what you knew. It's not working. Like, oh, crap, what's going on? Hold on. So you said, all right, I'm all in. My family, my friends, my peer group thinks I'm nuts. I go all in. I get a Hummer and I wrap a Hummer. I'm sorry. Listen, this is the first time I'm getting to know you. I don't picture you driving a Hummer around town. So you literally had a wrapped Hummer with, the branding and all. That's great.
Had the branding on it, find your purpose, change your life, the whole thing. And like I said, we got more leads off of the Hummer than I did digitals. I can't even begin to all the different marketing things that I put money into that first year. But it was the mindset shift, not the technique. That was really, I just said, yeah, I'm just going to serve people. And when they call me, off the Hummer, or when I speak on a radio show or I go do a talk, rather than trying to sell them something, I'm just going to talk to them and I'm going to find out what their problem is. And that's what I started to do. I was like, okay, well, where are you struggling? What's going on? Why is this a problem? And then lo and behold, people bought. So when I tried to sell, people didn't buy. When I focused on serving them, that's when they bought. And that was the beginning of what's now the authentic demand generation system.
Okay. So listen, this is the Profit Express. My business is Healy Success Solutions. I'm in business development on a different end. Okay. Working with sales teams, sales coaching, right? I know sales based on what, you had to sell your business. You were the founder of your business, so you're right. Tell me if I'm wrong. You were selling contracts, you were selling client engagements. So you're not selling, you're not eating, correct?
Yes, absolutely correct.
Okay. So now this is very interesting. So the world of business development, marketing, sales, specifically in the world of sales myself. So not only are you changing, the marketing methodology and going to authentic demand, but at the end of the day, you're still a business owner. And at the end of the day, what do business owners know? They know revenue, they know cash flow, covering expenses, making profit, right? Some of the just basic, 30,000 foot concepts. So did you have a tough time and I guess you kind of explained it, you started to sell when you stopped selling.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the funny part about it is people don't want to be sold to. They're willing to buy, but they don't want to be sold to. Mm-hmm. And you know that. You have your own ways of, I'm sure there's ways that you do it authentically. You're just not looking at it the same way I am. They don't want to be sold to. They don't want to be marketed to, especially the last two generations. They don't want to be marketed to. What they want is they want a relationship with you, and they want to know that you care about their needs. And that's why I use Apple as an example, because they're one of the largest corporations around. They take the time to really understand what I want in a product. And they don't try to market to everybody. They know who their buyer is, and they figure out what their buyer wants, and they care about it. So and they don't, push product all the time, and they're higher priced than competitors. I'm willing to pay that. Why? Because they understand me. They try to build a relationship with me. When I'm talking to a salesperson, they're asking me questions rather than just, hey, buy this laptop for this price. So it's this value-centric way that is an internal shift, not a strategy shift. And I was trying to make it a strategy shift. And what I had to do is I had to lean back into the fact, no, this is an inner shift, and I'm just going to focus on serving people. I'm going to figure out the strategy over time, but I've got to get back to just, I want to serve people in this way. Let me find a way to do that. And that's when authentic selling showed up, and the authentic demand generation system is learning how to just serve people. They will tell you when they're ready to buy.
I got to ask you, you brought it up. I'm always curious on it. There's a lot of generations out there now, boomers still, millennials, Gen X, Gen Z. Is it the millennial and Gen Z that embrace more the purpose-driven brands?
Yeah, without a doubt. And then women and boomers. And Gen X is a little bit of men and women. It's mostly women on the boomer side, men and women in Gen X. And I'm right on the line with Gen X. And then millennials and Gen Z, 70+% of their purchases are made based on the values of the company, whether or not they're sustainable, whether or not they're giving back to the community. And they pay attention to those things. And that was new for me to really understand. And that's why I think we're going to see this rise of conscious business in 2026 and beyond. Right now, my estimates are 14% of all businesses are operating this way. From the research that I've done, I think it's going to be significantly higher, because this is the funniest thing. The cost to acquire a customer has tripled in the last year. The cost to acquire a customer has tripled in the last year. So digital marketing isn't as effective. SEO is not as effective. PR is not as effective. Why? Wow. Because the buyer doesn't trust. So rather than trying to digitally market or SEO your way there, focus on serving them, giving like that quiz that we did for Your Izzy. That thing is rock solid and people love it. Those blogs that we do, those videos that we send on the proper way to use the makeup and things along those lines, they're built to serve rather than to sell. When the buyer's ready to buy, they buy.
Wow, you threw me a loop there, Terry. In the last 12 months, it's gotten three times
Last 12
more
months.
expensive.
3 times more expensive. The cost of acquisition is 3 times more expensive.
Holy crap.
Right.
And again, so SEO, digital, not nearly as effective.
PR, hardly at all effective.
PR.
PR's hard. Yeah, PR doesn't work. Digital marketing, SEO, all of the things. Print, of course, is struggling. Outdoor is struggling. And so companies are like, wait a minute, I don't understand. Why is it so much more expensive? And it's more expensive because they're not responding to your ads, because the ads are designed to get them to buy. What they want is they want you to connect with them and build a relationship with them, and they'll buy when they're ready.
This has been a very interesting conversation. I mean, I went in with a blank slate, like I tried to with all interviews, with no preconceived notions. You really took me down some interesting paths here. Very interesting. So now, all right. So let's talk skepticism, right? So in business, in capitalism is beautiful, and capitalism also has a dark side to it. We know that, okay? So there are people out there who create a business or in business, and they're very profit driven. And if you try to sell them on the idea of being purpose, they might laugh at you. You know those people, right? And I know those people.
Oh, yes.
They're out there. They'll always be out there. So here's a question to you. Let's have some fun for a moment. Have you seen companies out there who, again, there's opportunistic business people, and you know where I'm going. So like, okay, hey, you know what? What's the flavor of the month? Oh, let's be purpose driven. And do they try to whitewash the marketing to make themselves appear purpose driven when they might not give a crap? Are you seeing imposters out there? And do you have a fun example of one who, when you see their stuff, you cringe?
It's actually called greenwashing, not whitewashing. It's called greenwashing.
Okay.
And Fast Company just wrote an article about it. It was either September or October. It was a great article. Like, where did conscious business go wrong, or where did purpose go wrong? I can't remember the name of the article, but it was powerful. And they were basically being contrarian and basically saying exactly what you just said, that people are turned off on purpose. No, they're not turned off on purpose. What they're really turned off on is people pretending like they're doing something purposeful, or they're pretending that they care when they don't. And that's what I call the penalty box. There's a lot of companies right now, and I'm not going to name them. They know who they are. There's a lot of companies that are in the penalty box right now because they greenwashed their way. They talked a good game. They got into DEI because DEI was hot, and they got into this because it was hot, but they never were really committed to it. They weren't thinking holistically in terms of stakeholder capitalism. They just did the flavor of the month. Those companies are dying on the vine, and they're being punished in the media. More importantly, they're being punished by buyers that are just, the gig is up. But those companies that commit to this, what I call a value-based business model, those companies are more profitable. They are growing more authentically, and they have higher employee retention, which are, to me, the 3 most important things to building a company that has a higher valuation. You do those 3 things well, you're going to have a higher valuation. Those are the companies that are prospering. And that's why I think we're going to see a whole different game from 2026 to 2030, where those companies are going to be rewarded with market share, and the ones that greenwash their ways are going to be penalized.
I love it. Terri, great conversation today. Thanks for being on board the Profit Express with me. And again, today's guest, Terri Maxwell, she is the founder and CEO of Share on Purpose. Give us the obvious ones. How can people follow, connect, et cetera?
Yeah, the best way, I always like to connect with people on LinkedIn, because I think that, you can see my background, you can see what I stand for. So I always say go there. The 3 companies that are our largest that serve this target market is Succeed on Purpose. Succeed on Purpose helps individuals and teams become more purpose-driven but still profitable. And then Ignite on Purpose is our marketing company for purpose-driven businesses. And we do that on a pay-for-performance basis, hence a value-based business model. And then the third one is shiftco.org. And Shiftco trains conscious businesses to work through their pricing issues, to work through website conversion, to get their marketing and selling more authentic, to get their packaging, speaking more to the value, and their messaging speaking more to the value. So those are the three companies that, I spend the time in helping other people make this shift. But I always tell people, connect with me on LinkedIn and let's just have a conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you for our conversation today here on the Profit Express, Terri. Awesome message, awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you dipping into this topic and the work that you did and the work that you do and just owning that. I love it.
Hey, listen, I know what I don't know, and I know that if I'm curious about it, the listeners are curious about it. So my job is to bring people like you here. That's it, But
I love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Terri. This is the Profit Express again. Today's guest, Terri Maxwell. She is the founder and CEO of Share on Purpose. And you know what we're all about here on the show? It's about winning the battle for business. There's many, many ways to do it. And I think Terri made one hell of a great argument for the fact that you can win the battle for business. You can be profitable with a purpose-driven business. So until next time, this is Tim. This is the Profit Express. I'll see you soon.